Chapter 1. We are told that difference causes division. We are taught that difference causes conflict. Therefore, differences must be eradicated. That is what we were taught to believe. Then, we were called 625-726. We were nurtured in Junior Citizen Care Center 6189 and educated at Attainment Center 415 until we were 20. Like all the others, we were taught about the city and that our purpose is to serve the well-being of the city. We were taught that all are small parts of an even greater whole. There is no greater purpose than to serve the city, because the city in turn serves us and our fellow citizens. Long ago, we were taught, humans had been guided by selfish desires that had almost driven our species to extinction. In the aftermath of the disaster, the long-dead wise men known as the Preservers had built the city as a place where humankind could live in peace and harmony. To this end, so we were instructed, they built Central Authority, a powerful computer tasked with maintaining that peace and harmony. On the day of adulthood, we were all given the clothes and masks of full citizens and joined the outside world. The robes were long and bulky to hide the shapes of our bodies. The masks existed to obscure our faces. There were rumors that those whose bodies were shorter than others were given special shoes to walk in, so that they would seem to be the same height as the others. From the day we left the Attainment Center, like all citizens, we began our working lives. Like all citizens, we would be given a task to perform, and after 6 months we would be shifted to another, and so on and so forth. By the time we were 23, we had been a street cleaner, a food processing manager, a weaver, a transport director, a welder, and a record keeper. We enjoyed being a record keeper the most. Every day, those serving the city in security or management would send in reports to the Hall of Records. The record keeper's duties included transcribing the information into data slots, which were then uploaded to Central Authority. We also took the reports of concerned citizens reporting some equipment error or unusual, potentially dangerous behavior exhibited by one of their fellow citizens. These we uploaded to Central Authority, and the machine would decide which course of action should be taken. It was also our job to provide Central Authority with necessary data when a concerned citizen came to the room of answers with questions and other more personal concerns. As weeks went by, we discovered that we were developing dangerous feelings of preference for record keeping. But we couldn't help ourselves. We liked memorizing information and organizing it. We loved studying sheet upon sheet of data, searching like hawks for even the slightest abnormality. Hunting for information seemed to us more of a wondrous game than a chore. But we also derived satisfaction in finding records free of error. It brought us pleasure to see proof, incontrovertible, that the city was functioning as it ought to be, that all citizens were working industriously and faithfully in the service of their fellows. Back then, we didn't know how to describe the sensation of pleasure that we felt when a fellow citizen came to Central Authority with questions, and we would know exactly which data slot to feed into Central Authority so that it could give the answer. Of course, there was no chance of entering the wrong one. Central Authority always rejected the slot that it knew was incorrect. But even still, back then, we had no words to describe our pleasure, why we enjoyed record-keeping so much. It was difficult, not as difficult as welding or directing transport, but it wasn't easy, like street cleaning or managing a food plant. It was difficult, but we relished in this difficulty in ways that we did not enjoy welding. We began to keep track of our speed, always seeking to transcribe new records or sorting through data slots faster than the previous day or week. That too brought us pleasure, the sense that we were becoming even better citizens, better at serving the city, just simply being better at our task. We confess that being record-keeper both helped us, but it also helped bring about our great lapse. By the time we became a weaver, we were overwhelmed with feelings of boredom and frustration. Of course, when we told Central Authority about our feelings, we were given a day off and sent to one of the city's therapy centers. There, we would meditate on the mantra of uniformity. We would reflect on the cautionary stories of those breakers of the peace. Twice, we even used the center's bad room in order to give vent to our poisonous feelings. We would scream and beat the rubber walls and floor in an effort to let these terrible thoughts escape. Breakers of peace are vile and disruptive. They all had, in some way or another, defied the mantra of uniformity and the will of Central Authority. They all died. We did not want to be like them. We wanted to be a good citizen. But no matter what we did or how hard we tried, the resentment remained. We remained unsatisfied with our work and our lives. This was unacceptable, of course. Preference implied difference, and difference creates conflict. Becoming a record-keeper was a relief from those awful feelings. Those were good days, when our heart felt light and clean. The first 3 months were nothing but contentment. But as the 4th month came to an end, we began to dread the day of reassignment. We realized that we did not want to leave. This was in defiance of Central Authority, which had long ago, at the behest of the preservers, our ancestors, decreed that preference was a form of difference to be shunned. Yet we could not help but wish to remain record-keepers. We never wanted to leave that office surrounded by all that information, from the trivial to the important. But time passed without remorse for our feelings, and soon desperate thoughts and plans began to circulate in our mind. For the first time in months, we tried going back to the therapy center. Perhaps we were hoping that this time it would work. After all, we hadn't been angry since we began work as record-keeper. Maybe this time we would purge our soul of the evil desire to remain. If anything, we felt even worse. When we tried to use the bad room, the anger was even worse and it lasted longer, and it did not fade. Finally, in desperation, we went to ask Central Authority itself for help. Central Authority is the computer that had been created by the preservers to take care of the citizens of the city. It was rumored that there were other cities and other computers. If so, there was never any contact between our city and any other. We walked up the steps to where Central Authority resided, and, after waiting in line for hours like all the other petitioners, we were brought into the Room of Answers. The Room of Answers is relatively small and clean. There is a single chair in the center and tiny speakers in the corners. It was strange being on this side of Central Authority. It was strange thinking that somewhere behind those walls were other record keepers, providing the data slots so that Central Authority would answer. We were taught in the Attainment Center that before the preservers, humanity had created machines possessing intelligence comparable to that of humans. However, it was considered too dangerous to go so far. As such, while Central Authority directed the goings-on within the city, its interactions with humans were designed with built-in limitations that made it dependent on a human interface. The record keepers were one such interface. "What is your question, citizen?" asked Central Authority. We wish to remain as a record keeper." It was difficult to say. Admitting to such transgressive thoughts meant we ran the risk of being branded a breaker of peace. But surely Central Authority would understand our position once we explained it. There was a data slot for every subset of knowledge, every concern a citizen might have. Surely there would be an answer that could finally end these poisonous thoughts. "Impossible. City policy clearly states that no citizen may remain in a position longer than 6 months." We know this, but the desire to stay remains. We have tried all the methods recommended by the therapy center, but these thoughts and desires persist. "Such selfish desires are dangerous, citizen. You would risk causing disruption by exposing other citizens to these preferences that would make them aware of difference." We understand. Is there no other way to purge these desires from us? There was a significant pause. Perhaps the record keeper on duty was having trouble finding the right data slot. We couldn't help feeling a flicker of resentment at that possibility. We would never have taken so long. Immediately, we tried to push that thought out of our head. This is precisely why we are here, to stop thinking like this. At last, the voice of Central Authority responded. "If the therapy centers are ineffective, then there are only 2 possible solutions as recommended by the protocols of the preservers. The first is death, as would be the sentence for a breaker of peace." For a second, we felt as though our body had become a block of ice. "The second is to register you for a Lovejoy prescription." We swallowed nervously. Lovejoy, we are all taught, makes depressed and frustrated citizens happy and more content with serving the city. However, the drug is highly addictive, and prolonged use eats away at the minds of users. Eventually, addicts are rendered unable to work and are euthanized. Is there really no other way?" "None. The prescription will be delivered to your cell within 4 hours. So that was that, then. Our choices were stark and simple. Slow death by Lovejoy, or quick death by execution. As we made our way home, we looked up at the sun, which shone with cheerful brilliance, unaware of our distress, or simply uncaring. All around us, the other citizens went about their daily lives, just as oblivious. Of course, our mask meant they could not see the distress twisting our face. And what then? Our mind demanded. If they could see, you would only be disrupting their lives with your selfish concerns. We sighed, for this was true. The whole purpose of the city, according to the wisdom of the preservers, was to create a world where humans could live in perfect harmony and peace. Difference causes division. Difference causes conflict. Differences must be eradicated. We felt ashamed of these petty thoughts of ours, that we should presume that our struggle against these sinful preferences mattered more than the peace of our fellow citizens. We returned to our cell in housing block 225, a gray cube that can house up to 200 citizens. Our cell was identical to all the others, a small rectangular space big enough to sleep in. Those citizens who were employed as domestics for that half-year had replaced the bedclothes and pillows around noon, and I welcomed the clean smell as we slipped inside and closed the hatch behind us. Lying on our back, we twisted around to find and turn a dial on the inner wall. The light was reduced to a comfortable dimness, and we lay there, trying as best we could to empty our mind of the selfish and poisonous thoughts that plagued us. Of course, it didn't work, and our sleep that night was troubled. We dreamed that we were standing on a pinnacle of rock, drenched in sunlight so bright that we could barely see. But when we looked down, we saw people without masks. We tried to look away from such lewdness, but there was nowhere else to look. The unmasked ones surrounded us, beating away at the pinnacle with their bare hands. They glared up at us, their faces twisted with emotions I had never even heard of before. Eyes bulging, brows lowered, teeth bared, spittle flying from their mouths as they shouted up at us. It was repulsive, the looks on their exposed faces. Such poison, such negativity. Never in life had we seen such a thing. Eventually, under the relentless pounding of bloody fists, the pinnacle wavered and at last crumbled, pitching us downward into the waiting arms of the mob.